All right, welcome and thank you for joining us here today. And I'm here today with my friend Carol Geiler, and she and I have been working together. I had a session with her a while back, and we realized that we have a lot in common as far as our interests and what we're doing. So we've decided to venture on this channeling endeavor and see what we can come up with, because it's really fascinating. My name is Shay Sisler, and I have been told through the higher realms that I will be working with many channelers here in the future, getting information from the higher realms to help us in this endeavor that we are here in this journey through life. So we are able to connect to the halls of wisdom and understanding and learning, and it's so amazing when we're able to go there and get this information, and we all have the ability to do that. So part of what we're hoping to do here today is to create that awareness for people, talk a little bit about channeling and what it is and what it means. So anyway, I would like to introduce my guest, Carol Geiler, once again. And Carol, can you just share a little bit about you and your journey?
Absolutely. Thanks, Shay. No, I appreciate you having me. And you're right. I mean, we had sessions back and forth, and I had one of your sessions, and I wanted to say it was wonderful. You really brought me to this place where it was very emotional anyway. So I hope that people will kind of take a look at what you do. It's basically, you call it soul regression, correct?
Yes. Okay. I call myself a soul regression specialist. So it's very intense, and it's healing the wounds of the soul. My work.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. And so I appreciate you doing that for me. And sending that recording, and I'm still able to go back at it and look at it. And I really learned a lot out of that. And it was really relevant to what I was going through. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you for that. Yeah. And then you're right. That's kind of how we got connected, in the sense that it was like, oh, you're interested in channelers. And I went, I do some of that. And it was just kind of this synchronous event where we kind of blended together. So I tend not to talk about myself as a channeler, honestly. If you go to my website, it basically says psychic medium. I do consider myself a spiritual messenger. And really part of that is because that's where the channeled information comes from. It's messages that I believe are being delivered, like you said, from higher realms, wherever you refer to that. And then also I kind of consider myself a mentor, in the sense that I had my experiences much later in life. I was actually 44 years old when all of a sudden things really started happening. And some of my early experiences were actually, I called them like downloads. At night I would wake up and I would just start hearing all this information. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then of course there was mediumship and the psychic awareness, and a lot of spiritual stuff was happening as well. So it wasn't all psychic. And that's really when things started for me. And as you can see by my books back there, I'm an avid reader and I'm an avid learner, because for me, I wanted to understand what's happening. How does it work? How does all of this stuff put together? Because I had a lot of issues with channeling. This was a big stretch for me to do this. This was back in 2008 when it started. So we're in 2021, and I'm finally ready to kind of go, okay. So thanks for that nudge. But anyway, I don't want to get off topic, but that's a little bit about who I am and what I do. So
beautiful. So we're going to have a discussion about channeling today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
it's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I just kind of want to get an idea from you, what you consider channeling. What does that mean to you? I know when we first had this conversation, you're like, well, I don't consider myself a channeler, and then I'm like, well, I know I've been told I'm going to work with channelers, but I know you said you tap into the halls, wisdom and knowledge, and basically we kind of have the same thought about what we're doing. We just call it different terms. So
right. You're right. That's very true. I think it's kind of a terminology difference, but channeling has been around for a very long time. We look back to early trance mediumship, and they were considered, channeling. And so it's a term that's been around for quite some time, since the rise of spiritualism in the late 1800s. So it's certainly not a new term. And so it kind of does depend on how you personally define it. And I think that that's what's really important. Basically a channel is someone who steps aside, right? They put their personality aside and they allow information to come through in this very, what's considered pure voice. And so it is a stepping aside. So that channeling really can happen again in trance mediumship, where they're stepping aside and they're allowing this flow to take place. And then what happens in the channeling is who and or what are you connecting with? That becomes the next question. But it's really a detachment. So I like to consider channeling, in essence, it's a level of connection. It's a deepness, right? It's how deep are you going? Because a regular mediumship session is still channeling. It's how far have you gone? How far have you detached? How much in flow are you? How much are you stepping aside? Ideally, we should be stepping aside as deeply as we can when we're doing any type of, spiritual or psychic work. The same is probably true for you. How much can we step aside? But we do attribute, I think, channeling to receiving in this pure form. I mean, would that be kind of how you would define it as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, when I work with many of the channelers that I work with, it's pretty incredible because I'm able to get them relaxed to the point where they can actually hear those voices on the other side and connect. Now, there is a different level of connection sometimes when people are channeling, because there's many aspects of ourselves as we ascend and go, learn and have this journey on earth. So there's different aspects of someone that I'm channeling with, and they might be tapped into spirit guides. They might be tapped into grandparents. They might be tapped into ancestors, way back when.
Sure.
They might be tapped into their higher self, the divine part of themselves. And then I was always told that it's really important that I make sure that it's always coming from the heart space. So that was my biggest advice that I was given whenever I am channeling with someone. I'll always be able to tell where it's coming from based on what I'm feeling and if it's heart connected. Because if you're not careful, you can tap into some of those lower astral forms.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah. So, I mean, we get hung up on the word channeling and and I think that it can have some negative connotations, and it did for me as well, when really it's still a level of awareness. It's just a deep, intense level of awareness. And so people go, oh, it's channeled. They think they're talking to aliens or beings and I think sometimes people are, but we can also channel non-sentient forms of information, whether you call that Akashic or fields of information. Athletes have these superhuman experiences where they talk about, I was connected to something greater than myself. There was something happening in that moment where there was a level of performance that kicked in that wasn't me. It was beyond me, right? And so in many ways, they're channeling something that is beyond themselves, even though they wouldn't identify that as channeling per se. So I think it's a term, and I think it can be received positively or negatively, depending on who you're communicating in like a living person back and forth. How do you explain that to those individuals? Yeah.
Right. And when you talked about tapping into the Akashic, I have several of the channelers who go to the Akashic records or the Hall of Wisdom, and they're able to actually go in there and they're guided to their book of life, and they open up their book of life and they'll maybe be given a section of that is important for them to look at and to learn from and to help them either grow or develop something that they need to work on in the future. So the Akashic is really amazing when they can tap into that as well.
Very true. Yeah, right. So it has personal benefits. Absolutely. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, because we have that knowledge at our fingertips. All we have to do is tap into it.
Absolutely.
But sometimes we just don't know how to do it, but we can do that through meditation, or someone like yourself. They can go and help them get information. They can come to me as a soul regression specialist, and I can help them connect as well. So there's many ways to get to that information. So Carol, when you're channeling, who or what is it that you are connecting to?
That's a good question. And I think it's a really important question. And so I'm glad that you brought it up, because oftentimes when people channel, especially early on, they naturally make the assumption that, oh, someone is telling me this information, right? So it's coming from spirit. It's coming from a being. It's coming from a collective. And I think that there needs to be a level of discernment there. And that's why it took me a really long time, because I wanted to be really careful. Where's this information coming from? Not that it wasn't positive, because you're right. It was always positive. It was always beneficial. But I also realized that there were times where I could just turn on the faucet and information would just flow. I could stop it and start it, just like a water faucet, right? Turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. Okay. So when you can turn it off and turn it on like that, and it just immediately comes, that's not communication with a sentient being, right? That's what I call field information, okay? Whether you define it as Akashic or something else, it's just field information. It's knowledge, it's data, right? As opposed to talking to a human being. I'm having a conversation with you. I can't control whether you speak or not. Same thing is true in mediumship, right? I can't control who comes through. I can't control what they say to me, what they don't say to me. I can only say, here's what they're telling me. Here's what I'm giving you. So I think it's really important, and it took me a long period of time to develop the discernment, whether we're channeling or whether we're doing psychic work or mediumship, we need to know where the information is coming from. And that was a part of the reason I didn't embrace it for a long period of time, because that discernment has to be there. I needed to understand, why can I control the flow? If I can control the flow, then is it coming from me, or is it coming from somewhere else or someone else? Does that kind of answer what, because I think that's a really important question that when people are channeling, they should know.
Yeah, they should know. And so what did you discover, though, through your journey when you were channeling with a client? How do you know what or who you're channeling when you're working with a client?
Well, I don't channel with clients in the term that you and I are using channel as that deepness. Now, I have had some channeled moments. And again, I think that this is all boils down to discernment for me, which has really been what I've spent more time focusing on than the development itself, because the discernment is the key to when we know we're really ready. I think that because it's an ethical issue. So if I'm sitting down with you, for example, and having a session, is the information coming from you? Is the information coming from a loved one? Is the information coming from your guides? Is the information coming from a field? Each one of those has a different feel. And it's taken me a period of time to say, oh, I'm getting this from you. It's psychic. It's coming from you. Oh, nope. Your loved one is saying this. Oh, now your guides are saying this. Or this is the general wisdom that I need to pull. Each one of those come from, for me, they come in different locations. But when a spirit is present, and most mediums will tell you this, you're aware of presence. It has a feel, it has a vibration to it, which is very, very different from inert information, which would come from you, or let's just call it the Akashic for lack of, or field awareness, right? Higher field awareness. So those all have different vibratory qualities. So I don't know if that's really answering you in the sense that I don't channel per se, unless somebody's guides have something to tell me, and I have had that happen, but it's generally a couple of quick sentences, and then that's it.
Okay, beautiful. No, I love that.
Okay.
And then I know our journey together, we're going to be channeling different subjects. So as we get in there and get information about those subjects, I know for me, I'm very good at asking questions and drilling down into the information so that we can get a real clear, good understanding of what it is we're trying to put out there to humanity. So as we channel, do you know who or where you will be tapping into for this information? Or is
it will depend on the scenario. I mean, I've been in the middle, most of my channel stuff I write because I'm such a big writer. That's really where it works for me. It's where I get my best flow. So this is going to be a good experiment to ask me to do it consciously, because I'm used to doing it in a written form. But it's almost always more field awareness. It's kind of like all I have to do is open up the book and then just start writing the information. Now, there will be periods of time where I'm in the middle of writing information and all of a sudden presence shows up. And then I've actually been in the middle of a download from we're going to call again Kashik, right? Or I kind of hate that word because people think it's personalized. This is more a field awareness again. And then I went, oh, somebody's here. And then all of a sudden they'll give me a message and then I'll pick right back up where I left off. But this came from someone. This is coming from some place.
Beautiful.
So I am aware of the switch, just as I am when I'm doing a session with someone. Okay, now I'll tell you, this is coming from me psychically. I'm picking this up from you. Oh, wait, now this person's saying that, or this person's saying that, or here's the advice that I want to give you and where that's coming from. I think that's a very ethical issue in our sessions that we do with clients, that we tell them where it's coming from, because each one of those layers is more fallible. If I'm just getting it from you, it's just me. I could have some false misinterpretations there. That means you need to be very careful about that. Your loved one could come through and give you advice. You might be one of more careful about that. Whereas, the higher up the chain that awareness comes from, ideally, it's a little more pure, if that makes any sense.
Beautiful. Yes, it does.
So the same will happen in the session. Sorry to answer, long way around answering your question.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I will let you know this is coming from some place. Oh, wait, someone has stepped forward and then this is that. So I am aware of the difference. Yes.
Okay, beautiful. So when was the first time that you realized that you were channeling or had a channeling come through, and what did that feel like for you?
Well, I mentioned it briefly, where it kind of started back in 2008. And I called it downloads, and I still call them downloads because they'll happen sometime. It's like I just listen. It's like whoop, 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 and it comes. And I often will have to write it down. So it really started early on. And what was interesting about the information, again, it was beyond my current understanding, which is a big key, right? So it was like, wow, that's really interesting. Some of it I didn't know. Some of it I didn't believe when I heard it, right? So it's like, what? I don't even understand that. What are you talking about?
Right.
But then it kind of has this impact that you go, wow, that's deep. And I think that that's another kind of similarity to it. You're kind of like, wow, that's really beyond something that I would create for myself.
So let me ask you this. Do you actually hear a voice in your head, or do you feel the impression, or do you have a thought come in? How is it that you receive the...
That's a good question. Yeah. I am mainly clairaudient, which is really interesting because when I work with clients, I'm much more in the clairsentience, because you're right, we need to be in that heartfelt space. Where are we? But when it comes to I'm downloads, channeling, however you want to refer to it, it's almost all clairaudient. It's like there is a actual conversation in my head, and all I am doing is taking dictation.
Wow.
That's it. It's
Beautiful.
just dictation. So,
and can you hear the difference depending on where the information is coming from? Like if it's coming from, a guide, or...
That is where the heartfelt space comes in. That is where it's like, does it have an energy signature behind it? How is the energy signature? The language will change, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a person telling me that. If I pick up a book on my shelf that's written by one person, and then I pick up a book on a shelf that's written by another author, neither one of those are sentient. They're information. They're bodies of knowledge. They have different voices because they're coming from different people, different aspects. Sometimes I will have channeled information that's talks about thee and thou, and it sounds very biblical. And then there are other times where it's very scientific or practical. And so the tone of voice changes. But again, does that mean it's from someone or some place? That energetic has a feel to it that makes me go, well, presence, as opposed to information. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think
I will add one other thing though too, and it's interesting when getting, and I'm sure, I don't know, let me know if other channelers have done this as well. When you're hearing the information, I also get visuals. They'll show me graphics. And then I'll also have an intrinsic understanding, which is also something that I've noticed. So I can hear it, but I don't, it's like, how do you explain it? They'll tell you a concept and then you just get it. It just becomes this instantaneous knowing. It's like a claircognizance. Oh, I know exactly what they're talking about because you can feel it. You know it. They will give me visuals. So that's been a part of too. What's been difficult is just hearing it. I'm having to go back and create these diagrams or these visuals that they've given me that help illuminate the concept that they're trying to give. So it's very convoluted.
Yeah. Some of the channelers that I work with say that they just download a chunk of information, and then it's like they have to
unpack it. Yes, that's exactly the word that I would use.
Yeah.
Unpack it. You are absolutely, that's great.
And they have to try to decipher,
Yeah, so, I don't unpack in the time that I'm receiving. That unpacking generally has to happen afterwards because you're in the process of just getting the communication. And then I have to immediately go back and go, okay, they've got this visual, so I'll make notes on what the visual was. And then I'll go back. And oftentimes when I go back and I start unpacking, I actually get supporting help. That's when I can feel presence is there helping me go, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that, so that I can get some of that into a written format. No, that's a great term, unpacking. Absolutely. That's what happens. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Now, can anyone do this? Is this like certain people are just gifted to do this, or is this something that anybody can do?
No, and I hate that word gifted, and I hate that word special, and I hate that word chosen, and I think that creates the misnomer as far as psychic ability is concerned, mediumship. We all have the ability to connect. We are all spiritual beings. Psychic ability is not a thing. It's awareness. That's all it is. What are you aware of? What are you allowing yourself to be aware of? How far into that awareness are you allowing yourself to step into? What's the processes going on in your mind that stops that awareness from taking place? What fears do you have? So for me, it's all about awareness. That's it. We call it psychic, but it's a level of awareness. And the more you allow yourself to go into that space, to step into that space, just you deepen, because remember, channeling is just a depth of connection. It's a depth of awareness. Now, what you're going to connect with, I think every channeler is probably different. Is it going to be knowledge? It might be health, right? It might be, I was talking about athletes. Prime example is musicians have said, I don't know how I created that piece. I was detached. Something came through me. It felt like it was greater than me. They're channeling music. Artists are channeling visuals, and you will go back and look at some of the greats and they will say, hey, it didn't come from me. I was the conduit. Even scientists have done the same thing, not just in the form of precognitive dreams, but it's like, I don't know why. It was like I was in the zone and this came through and that's what I needed to do. And it led to this revelation. So it's not a spiritual thing. It's an anybody thing, and it applies in whatever it is that you're passionate about. So does that
Yeah, and that's amazing. And just looking at my life and my evolution through this whole process too, it's like, all of a sudden I'll get an idea and then I'll go write it down, and I'm thinking this is just me, right? And it wasn't until I really started on this journey that I'm on now that I started understanding that all those times when I had these amazing ideas, it was me, but it was probably, to me, it's a higher aspect of me.
Absolutely right.
Getting this information to me to help me on my journey here. But it took me a long time to understand that even though that's me, it's just a higher aspect of me giving this information. I have created so many things in my life from just this thought that comes into my mind, which is channeling. Really.
Exactly. That's it. And we take it as a blip, so we call it psychic, right? Oh, I had a psychic hit. I had a moment, right? It doesn't matter how it comes in. That's just the process that we describe it. But you had a moment. You had an awareness, and so we look at psychic ability as hit, 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 hit. Well, what channeling is one big long hit.
Yeah.
And so what happens in psychic ability or in mediumship, especially too, this is a big thing you kind of have to train yourself from, is detaching, right? You have to detach. You have to allow the information to come through. So the better we get at detaching, the more we move into that space of channeling. It is a depth of connection that is taking place. And when you can stop going, oh, I had a hit. I wonder where that came from. Was it me? What about this? What about that? Oh, I wondered if that evidence that I just gave that person was right. This is called the monkey mind that stopped the flow. And then you go, okay, wait a minute, let me go back and flow. So then you get another hit. Then the monkey brain goes, right? So when you start taking these monkey brain steps out, now you have a solid evolution. Now you have a reading. Now you have a mediumship connection. Now you have a flow, which is called channeling. And the deeper you detach and move into that space, the deeper you move into channeling. I mean, when you're doing your energy work, surely you're doing a level of channeling as well. You're detaching yourself, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I channel when I'm in sessions because I'm getting information. In fact, one time when I was doing sessions, they told me, they said, if you think Shay is the one conducting this session, then you need to think again, because we are feeding you this information. We're feeding you the questions. We're giving you the information.
Mm-hmm.
So they're always guiding me, channeling. So I'm channeling them to take a session in one direction or ask a particular question. And I also wanted to share another moment. This is several years ago, probably when I really started my journey. I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning and my mind would just be full of all this information.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to get up and start writing it down. And
Yes.
I would write for like 2 hours. Then I would go back to bed. And then the next night they did the same thing. And they did this for about a week. And I come up with all of these amazing ideas of things to do, right?
Yes.
Finally, I just said, hey, you guys got to stop. Because I was getting so exhausted, but at the same time, I was so energized.
Now, did you feel like it was coming from someone or from some place or from your higher self? I mean, were you able to discern those?
At the time, I had no idea about any of this. So
that's okay. Yeah.
I didn't know where it was coming from. I just felt like I'm getting this information.
Absolutely.
And these thoughts are coming in. And that's what I thought. They were just thoughts. And I thought, I'm just on a roll. And the thoughts just keep coming in. You know? But at the time, I had no idea about channeling.
It's a week-long roll.
Yeah. So, but it was incredible because now I can look back at it and know what it was.
Yes.
And say, hey, I am a channel. Plus, they've told me many times in many sessions that I am a channeler and I am, I have the ability to do what you do. I choose to use it in a different way,
Right.
But we're all channelers. We're all channelers and we all get information. And it's just how we choose to use the information that we do receive.
Absolutely. And that's why I think that was important, and that you bring up a good point is, it's going to be unique to the individual, right? Because we're here for different purposes. We have different form, different function, different skill sets. So people tend to think, oh, I'm going to channel, I'm going to talk to a spirit, or I'm going to channel and I'm going to get this information. And it's like, you might, but it could be music. It could be art. It could be science. It could be health. It could be nutrition. It could be athletics and performance. You may have this channeled moment where your body takes over and you all of a sudden have super performance. There's actually a book called In the Zone. It's really wonderful. It's about enhanced performance and athletes and their spiritual experiences. And then they come back and they have this experience and they've learned something, and then they manifest that in the world. So they become better athletes, they become better, but they're bringing that into the world. So these channeled moments, whatever they are, they're going to be unique to you. So don't put yourself in this box and say, I can't channel spiritual information. Maybe not. Maybe you need to channel animals or nature or whatever. It's going to be specific to you. And so you have to find that space and recognize, like you said, it's that depth of connection that we let flow.
Right.
Which it's still psychic. It's still use that same process. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think like a lot of times when people have those thoughts, they think that it doesn't have any value. So when someone is channeling themselves, is there value in that? Absolutely. What are your thoughts on that? If someone is just their own thoughts.
Well, I think there's key elements you need to look for as far as something has value. And I struggled with that as well, because we think, oh, it came from me, so it's not anything. Well, first of all, it tells us something really about how much we value ourselves. I think that's the first thing that's really important. If something comes from us and we've immediately devalued it, we're devaluing ourselves. Because was it beneficial for you? You just got done talking about how beneficial all of that information was for you, how beneficial the information has been for me. So first and foremost, if nobody ever even hears it, did it have value for you? Then why are you ignoring it? That just doesn't make any sense. You're devaluing yourself right off the gate, and that's just not something that we should do. I think it's okay to be curious. I think it's okay to ask questions. I think we have a responsibility to doing that. But as far as, devaluing it, I don't think so. I had some notes here and I wanted to go to a couple of other things about that. And I think you're right. Is the information loving? That's the next thing, right? Is it positive? Is it helpful? Is it beneficial? Does it move you forward? Did it have a benefit? If it does, again, who cares where it came from? It had a benefit for you, right? It gave you some kind of an insight. It made you more creative. It helped you with someone else. And then people tend to say, well, is it valid, right? Is it, maybe I'm just making it up and maybe it isn't real. And I think sometimes I have gotten information that I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to validate this, right? There's no way I'm going to be able to say, if they're giving me aspects of dimensions that exist beyond physical reality, which I have gotten, that's out there, right? I'm like, I can't validate that. Why are you even telling me this? Because Carol's scientific. I want facts. Don't give me stuff that I can't validate, But then when you start listening to what's in the message, even if I can't validate it, does it have a real world practical application? And the answer has been yes, because it's expanded my awareness. It's given me greater understanding. It's giving me a conceptual idea of how to live my life in a better way. And then what ends up being really funny is months or years down the road, something will come up in some scientific article or something will happen and I'll go, oh man, that's exactly what they told me.
I love it when
I feel like an idiot.
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Does that happen to you? I mean, where you've had an insight and then you weren't sure about it, or?
Yeah. I mean, it happens to me all the time too. And I mean, I learn every single day. Every time I do a session with somebody, I get so much more information. Like yesterday, I did a session with someone who does remote viewing.
Right.
I haven't really studied that a lot. I don't know, but I know when I have clients like that, it's my spiritual team guiding me to learn more. So we're always perpetually learning,
Right. Absolutely.
So I know I'll do a lot more research on it, but that's one of the ways that my spiritual team guides me, is through the sessions to bring the information about. So, and then the other thing that comes up a lot in even my work, but channeling especially, is the fact of like the fear that's associated around the word channel. Or, a lot of religions tell their congregation that the only person that should be receiving information from these dimensions or levels is your priest or top religious people. And so I think that there's a lot of fear associated around channeling.
I agree.
So do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Well, and feel free to chime in. You're right. I think it's a big thing. And even when you reached out to me, I mean, I had my own issues with it as well, and so I thought, okay, I'm just going to put it out there and I'm going to see whether or not this is something that I should be doing, right? Just kind of put it out in the atmosphere if it's good for me. And then lo and behold, it was probably a couple of weeks later, in the middle of the night, I was given a list of instructions of how I needed to do this. And I went, well, I guess that's my go button, right? So it's like you, okay, I wrote down the instructions, and then they also kind of they showed me this dry run interview of what it was going to look like when we did this. So I went, okay, that must be the go, right? But am I apprehensive? Do I have concerns? Sure, because none of us want to be judged. We feel like, what if the information's wrong? What if people think I think I'm special, because I don't believe that that's the case? Do I think I have my own unique set of talents? Absolutely. We all do. So we should be okay with our talents. Those are our gifts. Those are what we're here to give the world. So there's nothing wrong with loving yourself and loving your abilities and stuff like that. But that doesn't make us special, as we've already talked about. So I'm kind of getting off topic anyway about the fear kind of that. But I do understand that. And, as a matter of fact, I was reading an article just before we got on here that was written by a Christian journal that basically said, there should be channelers or just channeling false information, and mediumships are doing false information. And the only person that we should be listening to is the Word of God and Jesus and all that other kind of stuff. And I mean, even for me, there's like this wash from my Christian background, my very fundamental Christian background. It kind of comes up and goes, whoosh, what if I'm what if I'm doing something that's horrible? So I did delve into that fear. And it was a big part of probably a year long of me questioning back and forth. What about this? What about that? What about this? And what about that? And it was interesting because I was being led to Bible passages, and then I would read Bible passages, and then I would get some understanding about what that meant. And then I'm also very passionate about Saint Teresa of Lisieux. She actually, she had clairvoyant visions. She received messages from God, Jesus, that gave her instructions on building convents, serving the church, how to write books and passages that were to be shared with the nuns about the practices that they were supposed to have. And on one side of the fence, she had someone telling her that it was the devil and she needed to stop. And then in the church, she had someone else on the other side saying, I don't see how these are not helpful. Everything you're saying is beneficial. And he encouraged her. So here's this woman, devoutly religious, believing truly that what was coming to her was beneficial, and within the church, struggling with that same type of dynamic. And I read her works, and I have 3 or 4 of her books back there. And one of the things that she finally came to the conclusion is she says, anything that's loving, benevolent, and beneficial to her could not be replicated by something as evil as Satan.
Absolutely.
He said, only the love of God can produce something so wonderful and so beneficial. And she says, I can't turn from it. And that was her decision. So not trying to be religious and get into religion, but it's a big issue for a lot of people. It's a huge fear. And I felt very comforted by exploring her journey in a religious context and feeling like, okay, these people are having these same experiences. So why is it okay inside the church in a religious context, but why is it not okay when it's outside? And, we know Marianne Williamson, who did her version on top of the Course in Miracles, which were considered channeled works from Jesus. And you're seeing some Christian places that are saying that's false information and it shouldn't be followed. So you got a little tickle in your throat. That's okay. That's why I always have water. So I don't mean to tangent there, but I think that it is a very real world question that even people who are in religious scenarios, we know many of the saints had these very deep, profound experiences. And I was thankful that I was led in that direction to gain some comfort from it. I understand people's fears about it. Ultimately, for me, I had to say, look, same thing as Saint Teresa. This is what I'm being led to do. This is what I'm being called to do. I am not sharing anything that's telling you to not believe in God or Jesus or whatever your faith is. These are beneficial things to help you in life. Yes, but you're talking about the afterlife and you're talking about other dimensions and you don't know. I said, you're right, I don't know. I don't. I can only say, here's what it is. And if it's not right for you, don't surrender to me. I can't live up to 90% of the stuff that I hear. I'm just a messenger. It doesn't mean I can live it.
But one of the things, just talking about that little facet, first of all, I had to deal with the same thing during my journey because I was doing my work and then somebody said, you're doing devil's work. And I'm like, no.
It comes up all the time. It's just a constant. Just a constant.
Good. but I had to work through my own stuff, and I tried to
Yes.
stop doing it for a couple weeks because of that.
Absolutely.
And then I finally came to the term, no, this is what I need to do. This is what I've been here, chosen to do. This is what not that I chose to come here and do this. And so I'm going to continue to do what I do.
Gotcha.
But anyway, I did quit doing my work for a couple of weeks, and I really had to think about it because of the religious programming that I was sharing or had as well.
Right.
And then I finally realized it's coming from the heart, and it feels good, and I have to listen to my body and decide what works. And then I thought, if I'm helping people, then I'm going to continue this. But what I've realized is that there are over 7 billion people on the planet, and there are 7 billion truths.
Yes.
And so those people that need our work are going to find us.
Right.
Those
That's a good point too. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, those that don't are just going to go on their merry way. This is not going to resonate with them. We are here to help humanity to wake up, to understand some of the stuff that we're not taught in religious environments, because there's so much more to this life and what's going on here. So I know I'm here to help, wake up humanity and help them understand that and learn about the dimensions beyond here, about the afterlife, what goes on there too. So I know a lot of the subjects that we're going to touch on, we're going to ask those kind of questions and help get some understanding about, what is beyond here. How can we help people understand more about consciousness and the
Absolutely.
afterlife,
Right.
or, channeling for that matter.
So I'm curious, with the other channelers that you're working with, I mean, are they all getting information that's kind of consciousness related, or are you catching people that are bringing things in regards to other aspects like health or economy or politics, or
Health,
it's generally very
economy,
varied?
Yeah, well, health, economy, and politics is typically what is channeled in most of my sessions, because
which is interesting. I never get any of that.
Yeah, well, people want to know. I mean, they want to know what's going on in the world, what's happening in the world, what's happening with this and what's happening with that. And so
of course,
a lot of the channeling comes through in that way. So then we understand those. And the thing that I'm getting more than anything is that we all need to not get caught up in all of that out there and live our joy and do what we came here to do. And basically people are told, stop watching TV, because that's just kind of a negative source for us. But that comes up. The health comes a lot, especially right now, because with this ascension process, what are we eating? What are we putting in our bodies? The food that is contaminated through our air and our water and, the GMOs that we put in food. So there's a lot of channeling on that information.
Gotcha.
So it's just really widely dispersed, information, and it depends on what that channel that I work with wants to look at that day. We do have a lot of new people that are channeling, because this is just kind of new for me in the last couple of years.
Right.
So,
and you'd mentioned that. Yeah.
And so what I'm finding is that, first of all, I've been told that I am the catalyst for helping a lot of people wake up to that ability and that channeling innate part of them. And so when they come and they do a soul regression session with me, I'm oftentimes able to tap into that and give them answers, help them find answers to how to work with it. One girl that I channel with now quite a lot, they said her liver was a portal to the Council of Healers. So I connect with her a lot, and we get a lot of healing information.
Oh, that's nice. Perfect. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're able to actually, we work with some friends or people we know, and they have like 5 or 6 questions. We'll go in and ask personal questions about a particular person's health. And so one girl,
nice. Okay.
They told me that something was going on with her face and something's happening. And then she was coming in for a session with me the next day. And they told me that the session that she was going to have the next day was going to be profound healing. And when she came to see me the next day, all of a sudden she had Bell's palsy.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I'm sitting there talking to her, watching her, and I had been told the day before that something was going on here, and I'm watching her, and this eye is not blinking.
I had Bell's palsy in college. Yes, I know what that is. Yeah, I did.
So I told her about the channeling the day before, and then I said, I think you've got Bell's palsy. And she's like, really? Because she kept rubbing her eye. Anyway, that's what it ended up being. But it was really interesting that we got that information, and then we got, we did a lot of healing that day to help her.
Right.
The Bell's palsy only lasted a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's a very short-lived. It's temporary. It just dissipates on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I first started channeling with someone, we channeled for a whole year, and we got so much information, and it was very in-depth information talking about the oversoul and the energy and different aspects. On the other side there are dimensions and there are levels, and so they gave us really, really precise information about the other side. And I never produced any of that information because the person that I channeled with never felt really comfortable about the channeling. And I didn't feel comfortable putting it out there.
Right.
So,
Well, yeah, you have to respect her privacy, of course. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someday.
Well, you know what? The thing is I know that there are many other channels that I work with now. There's probably 6 or 7 people that I work with, and I know that information will come through in other ways and other channels.
Sure.
So then that are going to, be willing to share.
Right.
So,
No, and that's really true. I mean, it's because when you open up, you don't know what's going to come through, but that's why they say, ideas get dropped in different pockets, and all these people are coming up with the same ideas at the same time. And it's really kind of interesting, so it's about being open to those possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you actually have those videos that you're doing with the other channelers. Now, those are on your Shay Sisler YouTube channel, correct?
Yes, I have them there. I also have them posted on the One Community Rising YouTube channel that I have there too. So,
and I will get those links from you, and those will be in the show notes too. So people can kind of go check some of those others out. Yeah, I'll make sure that. So if you're wanting to see some of those other interviews and some of that channeled information, then you can go over and pop over to her site, and you can actually see some of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and then yours as well, because these are you're gonna put these up on your channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so send me your information so that I can connect people to your site too, because I'm sure going to be a lot of other stuff on your site that other people.
I am just getting it started, so but I'm getting there.
It'll be fun. No, you'll love it.
We all have to start somewhere, right? That's the whole point. We all have to start somewhere. So.
Well, is there any last information that you want to say or give to people about the channeling before we end today? Or
I don't think so. I just appreciate you taking the time to do the interview and to kind of discuss some of these, because I think it's really important that people understand. I think it's a couple of things that are coming to mind is, again, remember, I don't think that channeling makes me special. I think that we are all special. We are all unique. We all have something to bring. This is not about recognition. People go, oh, you want to be a channeler because you want to be recognized. It's like, actually, I really would prefer not.
Right.
I don't want the negativity that comes from that. Yeah. So that was why I was like the other gal, kind of hesitant to actually do it, but because the information has so much value for those who are interested in it, then I don't want to not share it. I mean, that's sad that all that information came out and then it doesn't go anywhere. And that happens because, of fear.
Well, and then there was a lot of fear on our end, first, because even, I had some fear also, because I'm like, what if I start putting all this information out there and people are going to think I'm weird,
And you know what? You're right. There's nothing you can do about it. It's like politicians get attacked and musicians and famous people. And it's like, it's a part of when you're following your bliss and doing what you're doing. Unfortunately, it's just a part of the game, and you just have to figure out a way to navigate it and kind of trust yourself and move forward, like you said, but it is a difficult step. And I think that's why people sometimes don't have success in life. maybe regardless of whether they just want to be an artist and do a painting or write a song, because there's that fear of whatever it is. And as a matter of fact, I just did a show with my girlfriend about fear and psychic abilities that we put on our show channel. And so it's a very common thing in life in general, is whether or not that fear goes. But, and just in closing, because I know we're not going to do any channeling today, but as it comes up, I really don't know what's going to happen. So I'm kind of on this journey and this experience. I will say that in the channeling that I do, as far as my written work is concerned, it's all very much focused on evolving your consciousness and understanding what psychic abilities are and how they work and how we can move into this. Because lately it's like the information isn't even about, they don't even like calling it psychic anymore. It's awareness. That's what it is. It's not psychic. It's awareness. What are you aware of? What is coming through? Are you honoring it? And are you putting it out there? Whether it's someone's loved one, whether it's what's going on with them, or whether it's something that's coming from the other realms, the non-physical realms. So that tends to be where my information falls. But I'm like you, I'm just going to go through it and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I love it. And I'm looking forward to the messages and the information that we are able to pull through. So I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
So Thank you, Carol, for the interview today. And thank you for, being part of my world. So,
no, thank you for a mutual gratification. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, because it was really very unexpected. So I'm like, what? I appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for sticking with us. And like I said, we'll have information in the show notes, and then stay tuned very soon. We will have those sessions coming up and we will see what happens. So thanks everybody for joining. Bye.
Bye.